Well, hello. I'm Steve Craffey, and I'm going to talk a little bit about overcoming obstacles today. So, everybody in this room has been through some type of obstacle, whether it be large or small, whether it be something that was of personal nature, business, school, and you've gone through that process. Maybe you avoided it, but you've also come out with an outcome that was either positive or negative. And today, as we go through the talk, I'm going to share some personal experience and point out some things that were helpful to me as I went through a challenge in my life. Now, before we start, I'd like you all to clear your mind and think about a challenge that you've had. It could be in the past. It could be something you're going through right now. But as we go through the talk, I'd like you to think about it and personalize the experience and see what you've gotten out of that adversity. In 2016, I was working for a very large organization. I had been there for 20 years. And it was a healthcare product organization. I worked in the medical device business. And my role in that was mainly helping hospitals, doctors, and nurses become more efficient at what they did, and hopefully buy a lot more of my company's product. But I really loved what I was doing, and you can imagine, I can't do efficiency from my desk. So I traveled quite a bit. I've been all over the United States and in Europe, the Netherlands, Spain, England, traveled to Japan. I've worked in Australia and New Zealand. And it was really a job that, as I was an undergraduate here at Bryant, I could have never imagined being in that type of role. And I really enjoyed the work. But as fate would have it, midway through the year, a reorganization was announced. Two large components of this corporation were going to come together and merge. And ultimately, my job was going to be eliminated as part of that. Well, for anybody who's been through corporate life, reorganizations are nothing new. These are things that happen all the time, and I had been through them on several occasions. But the difference in this one was that I realized that my next role was outside the organization I had spent more than half of my adult life with. And I let my mind drift. And eventually, I had thoughts of myself living under a highway overpass. And my sons, who were in college, would be joining me soon because they'd be thrown out for financial reasons, right? Now, obviously, I indulged myself in this thought. And it was very destructive, and it was not something that was helpful. So as I talk about my first suggestion, it's around perspective. And when you have an obstacle, it's important for us to understand it, not avoid it, but don't stare at it. So, as fate also would have it, my phone rang before I even left the organization. And it was a colleague that I had worked with. I had worked for his organization to help them become efficient in a number of ways. And he said, "Steve, we're implementing virtual cardiac rehab across the entirety of Southern California. And we'd like you to come, and I'd like to offer you a contract to run the project." And at first I was honored that such a large role and they were offering it to me, but I was also terrified. I had no experience in cardiology. What was I going to do? I was going to have to talk to cardiologists? I've never talked to a cardiologist. So I didn't immediately take the role, but as I stepped back and I realized it was the right thing, and I accepted it. So I wasn't going to be living under a bridge. And I found myself driving along the freeways of Southern California, visiting physicians and administrators, building a business case, defining clinical pathways. And it was fascinating work. And we had a great team. I had a fantastic medical director. The head of the innovation group who brought me in was a visionary. And I also had a great administrator who helped me along in this. And one day my phone rang again, and it was the director of the Health Innovation Group, and she said, "Steve, Aaron's coming back, and we'd like him to join you and for you to use him on the project." And I said, "Okay, great. Who's Aaron?" So Aaron turned out to be someone who had worked in the innovation group. He was a senior consultant. He had been out for a year with a very serious cancer diagnosis that now he had overcome and was coming back to work. And so next thing I knew, Aaron and I are negotiating the Southern California freeways together. And as you can imagine, if you've been to Southern California, they got a big traffic issue there. And we spent an awful lot of time in the car together, and we talked a lot about the project, but then it turned to personal matters. And one day we were driving from Pasadena down to our home base in Orange County, and I saw Aaron looking out the window, and he was looking at City of Hope Medical Center. And for those of you who aren't familiar, City of Hope is a major cancer treatment facility in the Los Angeles area. And Aaron sighed for a moment, and he turned back to me and he said, "I think it's time I tell you my story." And for the next hour, he told me about his diagnosis, the treatments he had gone through, chemotherapy, radiation, getting a bone marrow match, and then going through the bone marrow transplant. And I was amazed that he had gone through all of this. But the thing that struck me the most is that at the end of it, I realized Aaron didn't have any self-pity, and he had zero resentment towards what he had just been through. And I realized there, my role was to mentor Aaron. I was going to teach him, being the senior person, I was going to take this 32-year-old young man and give him all my knowledge and help him move along in his career. And as part of that, and you can imagine with a large project, we were spending a lot of the organization's money, which means we needed to do leadership presentations. And after working with Aaron for a few months, I realized this was a great opportunity for him to get out in front of the project. So with this meeting, we practiced our PowerPoints, we rehearsed it, and the day came, and Aaron was absolutely flat. It was horrible. And I was disappointed. But I vowed to coach Aaron and help make it better the next time. The next day, Aaron called me early in the morning and he said, "Steve, I'm feeling a little fatigued. I'm going to stay back today. I'm going to gain my strength and we'll be back at it next week." And I said, "Great." And on Friday, Aaron entered the hospital with a fever. And on Saturday, he lost his battle with cancer. And I was devastated. I was confused. I was angry. And it took some time for me to recover through that. But what I realized was I wasn't there to be Aaron's mentor. Aaron had discipline. He had a calmness. He had zero resentment. And these were actually the things I needed to complete our mission. And Aaron was there to mentor me in these areas. So number 2, don't make assumptions. We launched the project, and it was fantastic. Cardiac rehab is this activity of exercise and nutrition, and we were using an app and smartwatches and nurses, and people were getting better, and the results far exceeded any of our expectations. And I suggested to my client that we start to document some of these stories. And I have one in mind that it just blew me away. It was a 72-year-old grandfather in San Diego. And all this guy wanted to do was to go to Hawaii with his grandson. And we think about that, and it's okay, that's pretty mundane, especially from the West Coast. It's only a 5-hour flight, it's great. But this man had gone through quadruple bypass. And quadruple bypass is where they take veins out of your thigh, they open your chest, they replumb your heart while stopping it, and then restart your heart. So this man had been through some incredible times. And by the time I saw him, it was 4 months after that event. And he had met with his cardiologist. And they decided that going to Hawaii was exactly what he should do. And I was really blown away because I'd worked in healthcare for 25 years, but I never saw the full cycle of being on a team that delivered something and had an impact on somebody's life as much as this. And there were a lot more stories. By the time I left the project 2 years later, we had 12,000 patients referred to this program. It was absolutely phenomenal. So my third suggestion is give freely. It comes back. Finally, share what you've learned. And you'll get a few things out of this. First of all, as you begin to share, people will be able to take things from your experience and apply it to their own and do better. But you'll also become comfortable at becoming vulnerable and sharing your mistakes. And you'll become a better person. And people will notice. So my final suggestion is share what you've learned. I did make a lot of changes in my life, and somebody noticed. I met this phenomenal nurse during the project, and we got along great. We were wonderful friends. We shared stories. We had similar experiences. And last fall, I married that nurse on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And it was just amazing. So think about that adversity we talked about early on. When you've got an obstacle, when you've got something that you need to get through, think about this. Your greatest obstacle may turn out to be your greatest opportunity. Thank you.